can you tell me a bit how you got into this amazing world of clothing and designing?
Oh, wow. I've always been just a huge film aficionado and kind of a film nerd, really. I just love anything to do with big fantasy, sci-fi, all these type of genre films. That's always been a deep love of mine since I was a little kid, really. So then I worked really hard to make a living out of it, and I'm very happy to say it's going pretty well. And I get beautiful jobs like Our Flag Means Death.
Blackbeard, are you poor now?
But no, just trying something different, man.
How did you get involved in Our Flag Means?
So I was part of an interview process with David Jenkins. There was a beautiful costume designer in season 1, and unfortunately she couldn't do season 2. So they were looking for a new designer who could be true to what they had already established, and someone who knew the sort of the comedy side of it and understood the story and, had the right amount of queer and all the good things. And when I was interviewed, David Jenkins and I, the showrunner, we got along so well. And it was, love at first Zoom.
It's a new day.
That's so nice. To prepare for the show, I mean, you're with pirates. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know. So exciting. Well, lucky for me, I quite love pirates anyway. And I love that period, the 18th century is so beautiful. It's always so opulent and exciting as a costume designer. Any period you can do as a costume designer is so exciting. So when I was given the task of 18th century, I went deep into research, into books and other films and all sorts of imagery of the traditional 18th century. But then we had a meeting very early on, myself and David, and he said he wanted it to feel more sort of 1980s rock and roll, streets of New York, like you believe that these characters could be walking down the streets and going to a punk bar or, just very cool. And we already had a bit of a Mad Max thing going on. So it was sort of taking that 18th century beautiful silhouettes and the beautiful fabrics and all the opulence and then turning it on its head and sort of giving it like a 20th century punk over, a little pass. And that's what gives it like a pretty unique style, I think. So for me, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So yeah, I started with 18th century and then I started listening to all the music of rock and roll and lots of Prince and Bowie and Blondie and Patti Smith, Iggy Pop, all the good stuff. And then I went from there and sort of, gave everybody their unique new looks based on that as a guide, really, as a rule.
Blackbeard's gonna murder you.
Do you have like a mood board or something like that for each character?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. So I began with the worlds. First of all, we were doing the raid first up that we see in season 1. So I had a board that was like that beautiful pastel 18th century sherbet, delicious, like a little cake, little beautiful wedding. And then I had Blackbeard crew as a mood board with like leather and, zips and punk and studs and teeth and all these like mean, sharp things. So that's where I started with those 2 mood boards. And then from there, I did the individual characters of what was that feeling of that first raid on the boat. And so that's sort of where I began.
I love a good pirate's tale.
Who's your favorite? You must have.
I love them all equally. This is a very hard question that I get asked, but I have to say that I think turning Rhys Darby into a merman was probably my favorite task of all time. In my whole career, it's the highlight.
I've never seen Blackbeard like this.
I think I hurt him pretty bad.
Yeah, I had a very rough night last night.
If the show continues, like, no spoilers here, but is there something you'd like to explore with the clothing and the styles of the characters?
Oh, interesting. I'm not sure. I mean, that will be heavily reliant on any story elements that come my way. So, for instance, when I was reading the scripts and I knew season 1 so well, there was this beautiful surprise, which was the Chinese element. So we had Captain Zheng and this Chinese crew, and I thought, oh, I didn't expect it to go that way. And so I started researching 18th century China and what fabrics they would use, and all this beautiful different silhouettes to what we see in the classic sort of Eastern European style. So that was a very nice surprise. And I feel like, should we do more, there would be some other little story that something magic that the writers will come up with.
You don't know the first thing about piracy. It's not about glory. It's about belonging to something.
Gypsy, this is my last question. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Is there something like a fashion advice you like something you really like?
Oh, I mean, too many things, because for me, I'm like a fashion sponge. I love seeing people in the street and what they're wearing, and I go, "Ooh, I love her handbag," and I look at art, and I look at music, and I look at movies, and I'm like a sponge for all of this information. But I think my greatest thing is just be comfortable in yourself and express yourself however you desire, and the world will accept you. You might come across some boring people in your path, but just ignore them and be your true fabulous self.
Thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much for your
You're
time.
so welcome.